Hello and welcome to Talk of the Game. It's a match preview of West Ham United against Sheffield United on Saturday afternoon at the London Stadium. Gonzo, kick us off with your thoughts on the Blades, please.
Yeah, I mean, it's an awkward time for them to talk about them because they've just been on the receiving end of an absolute hammering by Newcastle. I think probably the kindest thing I can say is that people are reporting that it wasn't totally reflective. I'm not saying it was totally wrong and Sheffield United should have won 5-0, but as I understand it, it wasn't an 8-0 game. I mean, look, I went and looked at the goals at the time, and I've since looked at the stats. You know, Sheffield United, they had over 40% possession in it as well. I think they had some shots on. I think they had 9 shots on target, and I think Newcastle had 14. Sorry, they had 9 shots in total, and Newcastle had 14 shots in total. It's just only one of Sheffield United's shots was on target, and 8 of Newcastle's 14 shots were goals. So I guess, welcome to the clinical nature of the Premier League in that sense. But look, I think they've done well to get promoted. I can't remember. The guy's Paul
Heckingbottom.
Yeah, something like that. Something to do with bottoms anyway, which is why I remembered it.
Something like that. It is that. I just told you.
Yeah, but whatever. I knew it was bottom something. I knew it wasn't Higginbottom, but what was it? Picklebottom.
Heckingbottom.
What?
Heckingbottom.
Heckingbottom, which is, yeah, but I like it. It's sort of, his surname is half of sort of like a mild swear word and a bottom at the end of it. So I think that's really, look, calls for him to maybe Sheffield United replaced him are laughable. And I understand it's probably not the Sheffield United fans doing that, but you just think, come on, he's clearly done a bloody good job. They're doing well to be where they are, given the disparity in money between, not just Premier League clubs. Any club, I think, in the Championship that gets promoted when they haven't got bounce back payments has done really well, because they're all at a disadvantage. Realistically, the 3 relegated Premier League clubs be coming up every season. So I think they did really, really well. And I don't think they'll finish bottom. I don't think they're the worst team in the Premier League, put it that way.
I watched the game against Newcastle and they just gave up in the second half. It's hard not to when you're 3-4 down. How do you keep going? How do you keep yourself motivated? And at that point, it's damage limitation, isn't it? You've got to try and only lose 3-4-0. But they're just giving up. And the goals there was a variety of them. Some really good individual strikes like Anthony Gordon, some self-inflicted goals, errors by Sheffield United. Isak's one was one of those goals as well. Set pieces, which they're horrific at this season as well, which is also good for West Ham. But they're by far the worst team in the league at dealing with set pieces and crosses into that 18-yarder. And they were, again, every time Newcastle got a corner, it felt like they were going to have a shot at goal. So everything that could go wrong was going wrong for them. But context, they had the 2 best chances while it was 0-0. They should have been at least 1-0 up at this point. They didn't take their chances. And like you said, this is the clinical nature of the Premier League. And Newcastle are a damn good side as well. They're not going to beat anyone else 8-0, but they'll certainly put 3 or 4 past some teams between now and then of the season. They put 5 past us last season, just a few months ago. Newcastle stuck 5 past us on our patch as well. So they are capable. But what's interesting is you said it's like ludicrous to call for Heckingbottom to be sacked already. Well, first of all, they've only got 1 point in 6, I can kind of understand it, but because at the minute it looks like they're going straight back to the Championship. And I know
that's happening anyway.
Well, you say that, but then the 3 promoted teams last season stayed up.
Yeah, I know, but they were better than Sheffield United. They could change manager 3 or 4 times this season and they will still get relegated unless there's any big cash injection. Then it's just not going to happen. So really, which would be your next question, what's the best that they can do? What should their expectations be this season? Would be to grab the Premier League money, reinforce and get ready for another push and get a little bit something that don't follow the West Brom model now because they've disappeared out of the picture. They've not been promoted in the last few years, but it's something they did for a little while. They come up, they get promoted, they go down, they almost gain another player out of it and then come back. And incrementally over the course of a few years of 3 or 4 promotions, that Premier League money, they eventually made it tell. So I think the best way they're going to do it is to allow this guy to build for next season as well. That's just what I think. You know what? They can do. They could go and I'm not saying that you're saying Sam Allardyce, but they can go and appoint Sam Allardyce if they want. They can go and grab Warnock back again. They can go and get some new other manager who's done well in League One or the Championship if they want. They can go and get a foreign manager. Whatever way, you're still, to use one of my favourites, you're still rearranging the chairs on the Titanic. It doesn't overly matter that they'll be going down.
Well, what about your own sort of views on David Moyes last season to apply that sort of logic? Because you wanted Moyes sacked at one point, even though he was the manager who led us into Europe, we were still likely to win the Conference League at this point. So by you saying, well, there's no point changing the manager, you could have argued that a little bit with West Ham last season in some ways, that, well, what's the point? You know, this is...
Well, I don't think you could argue that at all. We'd just spent £200 million. We were the third highest spending club in world football. I would suggest we had the tools that a manager coming in at that point had enough to be able to turn it round. I think that's my point. Different managers could have done different things at West Ham. And that was £200 million without including Declan Rice, who went for £100 million. Arguably one of the best midfielders in Europe at the time. West Ham had a lot going for them in terms of playing style. In terms of playing style. Didn't have anything going for us in terms of playing style. Had a lot go. We had some really, really great players. So you could argue that maybe a manager coming in, maybe if we'd have got De Zerbi, for instance, he'd have come in and a lot of people, there's a lot of tools. I don't think you've got the tools to do the job if you go in at Sheffield United. I don't even think Pep Guardiola could keep them up.
I don't disagree. I think their squad on paper is a championship squad, and I don't think they'll stay up. I never expected them to stay up. But I don't know enough about Sheffield United's transfer dealings as to say whether it's the manager's fault or it's somebody else's fault at that club. Because the recruitment on paper looked okay. The players that they brought in looked okay. They're probably like top-end championship players that are waiting for an opportunity in the Premier League. So I get why they've gone down that route. They brought in, I think they signed 10 new signings in the summer. Some of them I've never heard of, but the ones that do know, I think were on paper were decent signings. I think the problem was when you lose two quite important players in Ndai and then Sander Berg as well. I think that is what confused me, if anything. I was looking at the recruitment over the summer, thinking I felt like they were almost preparing to get relegated before a ball was even kicked in some regards. Now I know the Ndai one was a bit different because they expected him to sign a new contract, and then they had the promotional video ready to rock and roll. He was getting Billy Sharp's number. I think Billy Sharp had recorded him a video saying like, congratulations, and here's my shirt number kind of thing. And then next thing you know, he's off out the door and stuff. So I think that was a bit of a shock to those involved at Sheffield United. Can you see any way? I mean, I think you made it clear, but can you see any way of them staying up?
No, and I don't mean it to be mean. I don't, but well, three teams have got to go down, and I think they're nailed on to be one of them, really.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I will apply the same to Luton as well. Sure. I don't see any way Luton stay up either. It's not just Sheffield United. It is Luton.
I think Sheffield United might finish above Luton, by the way.
They might finish 19th then.
Yeah.
If you're a Sheffield United fan, apologies, but that's our honest opinions on your team. And at one point after 6 games, it's just that we're possibly not incorrect at this point. However, opinions can be changed depending on what we see between now and next time we play you. Any players you admire from Sheffield United?
Yeah, Bogle. Bogle's a good player. Bogle is a good player. You're right about Burge. Big loss. Was surprised that happened. We can say all we want about the manager. The club, I don't know the ins and outs of it. Maybe he had a release clause. I don't know. If he didn't, that's bad on the club to allow that to happen, particularly to one of your rivals. And he went to Burnley, didn't he?
Yeah, he's at Burnley.
Yeah. So, there was this suspicion that Burnley were going to sweep all before him this season. But Burnley had Vincent Kompany, who I think is probably a good manager, but, Burnley are going to finish in the top 8. And I was hearing all sorts of things about Burnley. They ran before, they were holding Man City close in the cup last season before they eventually got trounced, which I never fully understood. But I do think he's a good manager. But I think there was this assumption that maybe, he can go to Burnley because they won't be contesting the relegation spots anyway. Well, I think it was a really, really bad move to do that because he's a colossus, actually. A really, really tough guy to deal with in central midfield, actually. And I think he's an operator that can cause problems in all areas of the pitch. I think he can really help you out defensively. I think because of his size, I think he's really good in the central positions. And I think he can join the attack and be a threat in the opposition's box as well. So, yeah, I think it was a bad one to lose. But I like Bogle. I think Bogle's a good player. One player ain't going to do it. I was surprised to actually see that Tom Davies was there. I was even more surprised when I checked on Tom Davies. Well, hold on, he's actually only 25. I thought he might be about 55 by now. He seems like he's been around for so long. Yeah, I mean, look, they don't have a ton of players that I recognise. And they've signed Ollie McBurney as well. Can I just say that? I mean, that's I don't know when that happened, but I do remember him. I remember us doing a build-up to a show, and then we looked at he played like 20 games and scored 1 goal or something like that. So, look, if you're going to survive in the league, you need somebody a bit more prolific than that, I think. Set up to score against us, of course, having said that. But, so yeah, they're not filled with quality in their squad, that's for sure.
Well, last season they had Endai doing the goal scoring. I think McBurney is a bit of a handful. He's not the most talented player in the world, but he's certainly got the right attitude. And this is what Heckingbottom was saying after Newcastle game. I think it was more of a shot at the new players because obviously a few left in the summer. A couple of the older ones like Billy Sharp, like Edna Stevens. I think he's at Stoke now. Sharp's over in the MLS, still scoring goals though. But I think he was suggesting that they've lost that attitude. They've lost that little bit of grit that they had. And now the new players are coming. They perhaps don't have that mentality that the old guard had. And McBurney's certainly one of the players that's got that.
Yeah, that's the DNA of their club as well, Geo. So you say grit, that is the DNA of that club for sure.
That's what he's got. And obviously, the 3 players I admire, only one of them I've seen do this what I like for Sheffield United, and he's not even a Sheffield United player, and that's obviously James McAtee on loan from Man City. I think he looks like a top talent. Looked fantastic at them last season. I think they did well. I think it was one of these moves that just makes sense. It makes sense for Sheffield United to have a player back that they know, that knows the club. Makes sense for Man City to send, I think he's 20, send their 20-year-old to a Premier League club where he's going to get a lot of game time. And it makes sense for James McAtee. I think the first 3-4 games of Premier League season, I think he had about 1 minute for Man City. So it makes sense for him to go to Sheffield United, be one of the main players for the season, get loads of minutes under his belt and go from there. But he looks like a really good talent. And then the other two, I've seen what they can do in the Championship, so can they do it in the Premier League? But neither were in a Sheffield United shirt. And one of them's Gustavo Hammer from Coventry City, and the other one's Cameron Archer, obviously a big money signing from Aston Villa.
That's the Villa one, the England under 21 player.
Yeah,
he's excellent. He scored. Yeah. He scored in the tournament. He's very good.
20 million, I think they forked out for him.
I didn't even know that. He's a good player.
He is. He's one of those players that's needs a break, really, and if they can get the best out of him, they've possibly got a Premier League striker there. But
in which case I apologise when you said players I might. Yeah, I was watching him. I thought he was one of. He didn't play in every game, and he was certainly used when the rotation was going on. But I thought he was very, very good. Actually, Cameron Archer. He's got the old thing, and he's got the old celebration as well, and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, a really good player. I think they've got a decent sign on their hands. Even if it don't work out from this season, they went down and they've got him. It'd be one of the very best players in the Championship.
Automatically one of the best strikers in the Championship. Same with Hammer. He was one of the best midfielders in the Championship. They've got him in the Premier League. Gives them a crack at the top flight. They go down. They've now got one of the best midfielders in the Championship as well. So anyway, enough about Sheffield United. Ready to discuss West Ham?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
And team news, everyone's available. David Moyes has got nothing to worry about. There's no injuries. There's no suspensions that we're aware of. Well, we were aware there's no suspensions. There's no injuries that we're aware of as well. So Moyes has got such a big squad. There's going to be some internationals, possibly Maxwell Cornet, not even in the matchday squad on Saturday afternoon. So David Moyes has an embarrassment of riches to select from this weekend for West Ham United. But for the next 5-10 minutes, we're not going to be discussing what we think Moyes will do. We're going to be discussing what we would like to see. However, you never know. We might just get what we want this weekend, Gonzo. That's what we'll discuss. In goal.
Areola, of course. Almost not a trick question, that.
I know, but just for clarity, Areola for myself as well. You're back for, I mean, this is where David Moyes has got, I think he's got 2 big decisions. I think one's at centre-back and one's in midfield, and this is his big call. So I'm assuming you're going to want to see Sufal right back and Emerson left back.
For sure, yeah. Obviously, Zuma has to play. I am very tempted to try and see if Mavropanos can play at left centre back. I think that I thought the game to do it was against Lincoln. He may have done it against Lincoln. I wouldn't bloody know, would I? But I certainly didn't hear a commentator say that. Listening to BBC Lancashire, that
For
thing
what
on
it's
an app,
worth,
it
he
was
definitely
cutting
didn't
out.
because Ogbonna was next to him. Had it been Kara and Mavropanos, then maybe, but Ogbonna was next to him.
But it was cutting out. So for every that listening to that, it was cutting out. They were buffering every 3rd minute. So basically, I listened to 3/4 of the game. It was, I wanted to kill my phone by the end of it. Wanted to kill BBC Radio Lancashire. Actually, wanted to kill a few of the West Ham players. But anyway, so I was feeling particularly murderous last night when I was listening to the game. But Mavropanos, I felt a couple of things. I felt a Gerd needed the game time if he was going to repair him. So I personally would have played a Gerd in that game, actually, because...
Why didn't you say that in the preview?
I've said it on. We do so many bloody videos, mate. I lost count. I definitely said it at some point this week that I think a Gerd probably could have done with a game time there against Lincoln. With that in mind, I would play him again in this one. But I mean, he's close. He's really, really close. At some point, you have to try and repair his confidence. There's no point saying, "Oh, we'll sell him." Well, nobody might come in and buy him. I'd imagine Liverpool won't buy him now after having looked at him close up. And you know what? I think even if you did want to sell him, it might not even happen. He's January. He's going away in the African Cup of Nations. It's highly unlikely. So we're going to need him. So we're going to need him. We better fix him. And so I'd probably play him in this one almost as a last chance. But Moyes has not managed that situation well because he still doesn't know whether or not Mavropanos can play that. And I suspect. I don't wish to be mean because I think he's been a great servant for the club. We are going to see quite a sharp decline just because of Father Time this season in Angelo Ogbonna. We're not, as the season goes on, we're not going to be able to use him more. I don't think that's going to be the case.
I would be bringing in Mavropanos for this one. I think with a little look ahead to the fixtures coming up, we've also got in the next league game after this one, we've got Newcastle United and then we've got Aston Villa. 2 really tough fixtures. And with the greatest respect, Sheffield United, I'd rather try Mavropanos and Zouma in this one than against Newcastle United with either Isak or Wilson running around between them. I think also we've got the European games sort of help a little bit, so Gerd can play that one next to Thilo Kehrer probably. Whether I'd move Zouma over or move Mavropanos over, I don't know. That's up for David Moyes. I'm not seeing Mavropanos enough to say whether he can play on the left. And we know Zuma's performances decline a bit when he's playing on the left. So it's up to Moyes to decide which one is better suited in regards to how that partnership looks. But I think it's time for it to drop Gerd. We need a win on Saturday. I think we'll get on to the importance of the game. We need a win. So therefore, part of that is A, scoring goals, but also B, we've not kept a clean sheet. We've kept one against Lincoln City, but in the league, it's well into last season since we last kept a clean sheet. I think 6 games in the Premier League now, I think that's enough time for Gerd and Zouma. I think they've had plenty of opportunity now. And while we had some good defensive performances, such as Brighton and Chelsea, there's too many mistakes in there. And we can't afford to keep making these errors. And at the end of the day, it almost feels like we have to score 2 against Sheffield United because Gerd's probably going to give their strikers an opportunity. And I don't like that mentality. I want to cut this out. And that means dropping a Gerd, play him on Thursday night. So Mavropanos comes in for me. You can't spend 20 million on a player and not use him. And, Thursday's a much better test than what we saw.
To be fair, you can spend 29 million.
Well, he can and he has, but he shouldn't be able to do that. So that's my back for Mavropanos on for Gerd. Now, the other big decision he's got is whether to include Thomas Souček or Mohammed Kudus. It seems like that's the
I agree.
Choice, really. How would you like your midfield 3 to line up? And this is obviously going to give it away.
In all honesty, I'm not overly asked because if their set pieces are as weak as everybody, including yourself, would have us believe, you sort of might as well chuck Souček in there, really. The trouble is he's flogged both of them against Lincoln. So they've both played lots of minutes. And I don't feel that we found out anything about Kudus, but I say that as somebody that didn't see the game. Apparently, the radio commentator would have you believe that he was one of the more lively West Ham players during the game. But we also do know that Souček came and scored a header from a corner for the second time, in the space of a fortnight, hasn't he? So
a week.
A week, sorry, yeah. So he's he's pushing for form, but then again, so Kudus has also scored 2 goals, 1 goal, and so he's going to be, pushing for an inclusion. I don't care because I think ultimately West Ham win this game, but I'd like to, a bit like the Mavropanos thing, I'd like to find out where Kudus could play. So probably for me, I'd start this game with Kudus in the team. I'd play him central to see if he could play there. And I would play Lucas Paquetá on the left-hand side because I think it's juicy.
Yeah, I completely agree with all that, actually. That's a team I would like to see. So for those tuning in that's quite unsure, we'd like to see Edson Alvarez doing his defensive midfield work with James Ward-Prowse, Mohammed Kudus in the middle of the pitch, Jared Bowen on the right, Lucas Paquetá. On paper, he's on the left, but he goes wandering. And then up front...
It would have to be Mikel Antonio. There's not another viable option.
I think with Souček, while I'm not included in my 11, I fully expect Moyes to. Would you expect Kudus to be on the bench and Souček to start this?
Yeah, I would, absolutely, yeah.
And I think it's hard, actually, because I actually think Souček deserves to start. I think Souček's had a good season. We have to do our best to forget last season, forget it. Start from this season only, and I think Souček's had a good season so far because he's no longer got the shackles of Declan Rice. He's no longer got the inferior player playing next to him, where Souček has to be compromised in order to get the best of Declan Rice. I think Souček's so far is having a good time. I've spoken to a couple of people at the game. They suggested that Kudus and Souček were 2 of our better players against Lincoln as well. So he's in good form and he deserves to start. But the issue for him is Alvarez is undroppable, Ward-Prowse is undroppable, Paqueta's undroppable, Bowen's undroppable, so that leaves him and Kudus fighting for one spot in the team. Sure. So the question isn't, does Souček deserve to start? Because I think the answer is yes. I think the question is, who's best suited to this game? And I think the answer for me is Mohammed Kudus, because while Sheffield United are poor at set pieces and we will hopefully capitalise on them, I don't want to rely on that. We cannot afford to rely on getting corners. We need to do stuff from open play. We need to be creating from open play. It's something we're struggling a little bit with. In games where we have the majority of possession, we're really struggling. Sheffield United will possibly retain their back 3 for this one, or a back 5 when defending. So it might be difficult to break this lot down. So we're going to need someone that's got the X factor. But when we played TSC and we were scoring from corners, a lot of those corners were coming from Kudus shooting from outside the box.
They were.
So if you take him out, you lose a lot of your corners, which is leading to goals. So you need to pick up the corners. So I think for that, I think Kudus has to start. It's easier to start him in this game than it is the next 2 Premier League fixtures, which is Newcastle and Aston Villa. I think it's easier to start Souček in those ones and have a strong midfield. Kudus has to start. And like you said, Mikel Antonio, there's just no alternative option.
No, I'm trying to keep a lid on the whole Danny Ings thing at the moment, and I'm sort of aware that I'm more annoyed than I probably should be. We're still in the cup, we're still in Europe. We won our first, both competitions won our first, both games. If we win this game in the league, then we're gonna be mixing around, I'd imagine, in the top 6 or whatever. It's hard to be, you have to go out your way to be grumpy with that stuff. Yet still, there's something in the back of my mind that I'm really not happy with the Danny Ings situation at all. And the striker, and when I say Danny Ings situation, it's the whole thing. It's the whole striker situation as well, which obviously has a little subtext, doesn't it? Which is the inability of a forward from the academy to force his way in, and so they require patience, and they really do require patience, because I wouldn't blame Mavropanos, but in many respects did get his chance. We didn't see him, but he got a chance. He did get a decent amount of minutes against Lincoln, but I don't think the conditions suited him. If you were Callum Marshall, I'd certainly be looking at it thinking, well, okay, that's 11 goals in 6 games plus 6 assists. How many do you want? What about if I'd scored 30 goals in 6 games? Would that get me in? As I think there's nothing. I think sometimes we watch some of these games and in Europe, and I think you in fact you said to me, well, you said to everyone on the video. I think you said something like if Mohammed Kudus could score 4 goals against TSC and he still wouldn't start against Liverpool. I think that's what you said. Well, actually scored half as many in 1 goal. He scored half as many as that against TSC and he didn't. So sometimes it doesn't matter what you do, you can't get in. And so there's a frustration that we are now in a situation where really our only viable option is Mikel Antonio as forward, which is exactly the bloody same situation we were in when we sold Sebastian Haller. Nothing has changed. Nothing has improved in that instance. So that worries me, but I am also conscious that actually this season it's going pretty damn well. But I'm worried. I'm worried about what might happen rather than what actually has happened.
I think one thing I will say, I thought Antonio was dreadful against Liverpool, right? But I think prior to that, I think he's had a good season so far. I think Antonio's been in really good nick, actually, and been putting in some good performances. I'm willing to start Antonio, not because of lack of alternatives, but because I think he deserves to start this game, actually. But my frustration is the same as yours, which is the bench option, actually. And I was just quickly jotting down who I think will be on the bench. It's obviously not something we do, but you call it the Danny Ings situation. I would actually call it the Mubama situation. I think I know it's sort of the same.
Yep.
But I think the emphasis is actually on the lack of opportunities for Mubama rather than the inclusion of Ings. But I'm just looking there, and if Creswell is fit for this game, which we don't know, well, I should have said that, actually. He's the one carrying it all. But if Creswell is fit, there's a good chance Mubama won't even be on the bench because I've just written down the players now, and that would give us the 9 on the bench would be Fabianski, Kerr, Ogbonna, Creswell, Aguerd, if Mavropanos starts, if not Mavropanos, Benrahma, Fornals, Ings, and then Souček or Kudus. So that's leaving out Cornet, Johnson, Coventry, and then Mubama as well would also be left out. So there's depends on Creswell's fitness. I think if Creswell's out, I think Mubama will be on the bench ahead of Maxwell Cornet, but I don't know. So there's a good chance he won't even make the bench on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be incredibly demotivating. It really must, particularly when you look at that. And I can't remember exactly the composition of your bench, but I would imagine at least 3 of those players. And I'm not talking about the Cornet and Coventry you mentioned. I know you said they won't be on the bench, but at least 3 of those players you mentioned that are on the bench won't be at West Ham next season. So I'd imagine if I think it's difficult to
4 of them: Fabianski, Ogbonna, Creswell, Fornals. That's 4 of them,
and Ings. And I think
5 then.
It's very exactly. So, and I think it's very, very hard when you're being asked to commit yourself to a club when you're probably looking and you're probably seeing players in front of you who aren't committed to the club long term and they're getting in ahead of you. So, but you know what? It's just one of those things. It's one of the frustrations. But ultimately, I have to say, you know, football is results driven, and myself, like anyone, if West Ham beat Sheffield United with 2 Thomas Souček headers from James Ward-Prowse corners at the weekend, and I don't even know where we could be in the league, but whatever. If we find ourselves in 5th or 6th or something like that, I don't know. I'm completely guessing at the moment. Still in all competitions, 5th in the league. You know, honestly, quite frankly, Thomas Souček can keep heading us to victory all season for all I care. Bring it on.
Yeah, just for clarity, before someone misquotes us here, if Souček starts, I expect him to have a good game. I'm not saying he's going to play crap. I'd just prefer to see Kudus. Are you confident for this one?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we need to win this, not because we get relegated. No one's getting, well, I don't mean no one. There's obviously, we've already said in this, I think Sheffield United will, but there's a big disparity between the money of the established Premier League clubs and some of the clubs being promoted and some of the clubs that may be struggling financially. We're not one of those clubs. So it's not important because we'll get relegated, but it's important if we want to keep up good momentum the early stage of the season. You can make excuses and you can pass that off with the results against Manchester City and with the results against Liverpool. That's fine, but you have to get the win against Sheffield United. You then look back and think, okay, well, we beat Chelsea, we beat Brighton. All right, we lost to a couple of really good teams, but we were still in the game. We're through in the cup. Yeah, you know what? It was a tough game. It was windy and it was wet and so on and so forth. Apparently, we didn't get to see it. But, you just think, well, okay, that's fine. We beat Sheffield United. We're high up in the league. We're in all competitions. That's good. So yes, I am confident in that, and I think we will. And yeah, I mean, he's got the squad from it. And let's be fair, Gio. Whilst I got a little sort of side whinge, if you like, that I just had. Players like James Ward-Prowse are exceptional in the Premier League. Lucas Paquetá is a brilliant player. Edson Alvarez, Kurt Zouma. These are tough players. Jared Bowen, and there's going to be others that I've missed out. This is gonna be a tough day at the office for Sheffield United. So I do expect us to win. Yeah,
I'm confident as well. I think, regardless of who he picks, I think we're confident on 9 of the starting 11. It's Aguerd or Mavropanos and then Souček or Kudus. I think that's the only 2 debates, really. Regardless of which 2 he selects, I expect us to go and win this match. Because the fact of the matter is, Sheffield United are dreadful at set pieces. I'll be honest with you, I was pleased they never sacked Heckingbottom. There's some rumours that his job's sort of like on the line. Understandably, 1 point after 6 games, you can understand why they're potentially pulling the trigger after an 8-0 defeat. I thought, oh, don't sack him because we will be on the receiving end of not necessarily the new manager bounce per se, but possibly a pissed off animal rather than a wounded one, a really angry one with a new manager. I thought, no, we don't want that. But more importantly, I was thinking the new manager might tighten up that set pieces. He might come in and say, whoa, let's stop that. And then imagine Heckingbottom's working on it. He's not stupid. He's going to know that they are rubbish at set pieces. We're away play West Ham. Let's make sure we're better. But I'd be surprised if they've gone from the worst in the league to best in the league in a week. I'd be shocked at that because
that'd be something, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Not only have they got to focus on set pieces, they've got other things they have to focus on. Lack of goals, defending an open play. There's a lot they've got to be working on in this week as well. So even if we play 6 out of 10 this week, because we're that good at set pieces, I still expect us to win, even if it's just by scoring a goal at a corner. We're still waiting on that James Ward-Prowse direct free kick hitting the back of the net. I've got a feeling it's going to be this weekend as well, actually. But that's part of the reason that's part of the reason I want Kudus in the team, because we've only had 1 free kick where James Ward-Prowse can shoot.
We have, yes, yeah.
1. Who's the most...
he was useless, wasn't he?
And there's Kudus that drew the foul for that as well. But who's most likely gets free kicks outside the box? Probably Mohammed Kudus. With Paquetá slightly to the left now, you're missing him in there. But he doesn't draw fouls or that outside the area. He's usually a little bit deeper, a little bit wider, trying to impact the play. So we want Ward-Prowse's shooting ability from dead balls. Then you're going to want to win free kicks. And I think Kudus is the best player in the team to go get them. So I'm confident for this. It's an important game. I wouldn't describe it as a big one. If we win this, it doesn't mean we're going to get European football. If we lose, it doesn't mean we're in a relegation battle. But it's an important one just to get a little bit of momentum back behind us again after 2 tough games against Liverpool and Man City. We lost them, like you said. If we win this one, so what? We lose this one, though, and suddenly it puts a little bit of pressure on the Newcastle and Villa games, and we don't want that. We want to go into those ones with a little bit of breathing space, where actually 3 points from that 2 games would be a really good return, and then we can focus on Everton after that one. So I think this is an important game for us, an important game for some players as well. But we've got good competition, and also got European game on Thursday. So Gonzo, can I get any final words from yourself, please, and your all-important score prediction?
Yeah, you know what? Big game for David Moyes in terms of his squad rotation, because that's what he did. He did it against Lincoln, and it wasn't pretty. Didn't see it, but it worked. Ultimately, it worked. He rested. He left a load of players in London, and those players are going to feature. And I was thinking about it last night after the game, and if they were doing their preparation, they probably did very little preparation, those players, on the Tuesday. They would have absolutely had the Wednesday off, and they probably didn't even come in very early Thursday morning for a warm down. So those players that he's left behind, like James Ward-Prowse, like Paquetá, etc., are going to have had a couple of days off midweek. Arguably, probably had more days off than they would have had if we'd have just had 1 game a week. So I would expect us to stand us in good stead, and for us to be really up and fit and ready and firing for this, and I think it should be 3-0.
I'm confident we're going to win. I'm predicting a score. I'm sort of deliberating as to which one, because I'm like, 2-0, a comfortable 2-0, but then we can't keep a clean sheet. But I also fancy a 2-goal lead win. So I'm going to say 3-1 West Ham because we just can't keep clean sheets at the minute. So there you go. That's my score prediction. And fingers crossed we can get that 3 points. But I want to see some good football, Gonzo. I want to see a little bit of entertainment on Saturday afternoon.
Who are you going to watch then?
Very good. I mean, I was barely going to, I'm not even sure I'm going to watch West Ham this weekend thanks to the train strikes, but that's a completely different topic.
That was a private conversation before.
Gonzo got the rant before we went live. But anyway, if you've enjoyed this preview, please do drop a like on, subscribe to Ham's Chat, and we'll catch you in the comment section.